FromSoftware is one of the best developers out there since they listen to their community and give the people what they want. They also have created some of our favorite games of all time and keep surprising the community with new content. They know what people want and also what they need, and that is why they are the kings of Souls-likes. They were literally the ones that created the genre and built what Souls-likes are today. So we are going to be ranking all of the FromSoftware Souls-likes from worst to best. Keep in mind that this is our opinion and we will be ranking each game by mechanics and the amount of content in each. We'll also go over what our opinion of the game is, so this list might look a lot different from your tier list of the FromSoft games. You probably aren't surprised to see Dark Souls 2 this low on the list, but there are some people who swear by it. For us though, there are more cons in the game than pros, and that's why we are putting it so low. If you ever played Dark Souls 2, then you know what we mean by cons. Whether it be the really terrible enemy aggression, or terrible enemy hitboxes, Dark Souls 2 is by far the worst when it comes to combat. There's one thing about the game that is really good though, and that's the world and enemy design. If the game had a remake just like the Demon Souls remake on the PS5, then Dark Souls 2 would be incredible. The game is amazing if you fix a few of the flaws that it has in the first place. Yes, there is the Scholar of the First Sin edition that made the game better, but the game still has the issues with the enemies. As we said before, the enemies don't seem to lose aggro, so it's difficult to run past them, and the boss runbacks are absolutely terrible in some places. But in light of the flaws the game has, it still has some fun moments. Yes, the game is the lowest on the list, but it's still worth playing if you want that Souls-like kick. Hopefully putting Bloodborne this low on the list won't make too many people angry, but we have a good reason for it. Yes, the game is incredible, but the game still has a few issues we want to address. First issue we have is with the frame rate. Yes, 30 FPS is totally playable and you get used to it pretty quick, but it is unacceptable to have an amazing game like this and not have a remaster or any update to help with the frame rate. We are mostly PC gamers, so we're used to playing games at 100 plus frames, and going to something that is locked at 30 is very jarring. You do get used to it pretty quick, so it's not the end of the world. The other gripe we have with the game are the healing items. The blood vials are cool in theory, but it gets really annoying when you run out and you need to farm for them. Dark Souls changed this entirely by adding in the Estus flask that gives you healing every time you respawn or rest. If Bloodborne had an Estus flask equivalent, then it will be a million times better. Other than those two gripes, the game is incredible though, and has one of the best DLCs in FromSoft history. The game is extremely unique and is totally worth it if you have a PlayStation. Hopefully they come out with a remaster or remake that will let people experience the game for the first time. Yes, we are putting Demon Souls above Bloodborne. Are you mad? The reason's actually very simple. The Demon Souls remake is one of the best looking games we have ever played. We never played the original when it was released back on the PS3, but we definitely could have played it on an emulator. If you have played the remake, you know how satisfying the gameplay is. Yes, the game does have its issues, like the boss runbacks being the most annoying out of all the FromSoft games, but that's because it was the first game that jump-started the Souls-like genre. If you do have a PS5, then it is definitely worth playing if you are into Souls-like games. Although it is extremely confusing if you go in blind. The game has a system called World Tendency that's basically an honor system that you need to follow for specific things to happen. It's very difficult to understand how it works if you have no idea. We ended up platinuming the game and it was not easy, but we finally made it through. Just because it's a confusing game is the reason it is lower on the list, but it's still an incredible experience. Dark Souls Remastered was sort of a letdown for a ton of people when it first released, but that was because it didn't really add much to the game in terms of graphical options, but it did make the game run at 60 FPS instead of 30. Although, we first played the game back in 2019 and it blew our expectations away. Not only is the game fun, but it has one of the most uniquely crafted worlds in all of gaming. People refer to Dark Souls 1 as being pancaked, and this means that the world is all built on top of each other. You will go through a location for a long period of time, and then eventually come out somewhere you knew previously. This makes the game super satisfying to explore since everything is so intertwined. Yes, the game can be a bit janky at times, but you get used to it pretty quick. It is insane how far ahead FromSoftware was back in 2011. We put this in number 4 because the top 3 games for us are ones we go back to and play every year or two. Although we go back and play every game on this list every once in a while. All FromSoft games are extremely replayable and totally worth your time if you haven't played them already. There are some people who probably will say that Sekiro doesn't belong on this list, but we have to disagree with them. This is a FromSoft game list, and Sekiro is one of FromSoft's best games ever, so it definitely deserves to be on the list. If you haven't played the game before, you will know that it has some of the most satisfying combat of any game like it. Yes, you only get a single choice for a weapon, and you only get a finite number of uses for the prosthetic tools, but the gameplay totally makes up for it. The game was made with one weapon in mind, and making multiple weapons to choose from might have messed with the flow of the game. Maybe if they make a Sekiro 2, then they could try to go for more weapons. But Sekiro is another one of those games for us that we 100%ed and was totally worth it. There are people who enjoyed Sekiro and not any of the other Souls-likes, and vice versa, but nothing can beat the attack deflect combat style the game has. Of course, there are still 2 more games on this list that are even better in our eyes, and you can probably guess what they are. It was really difficult to figure out which of the top 2 were going to be placed at number 1, but we have good reasons for it. When it comes to Dark Souls 3, it is by far one of our favorites because it was actually the first FromSoftware game that we played. We had first tried it and got about halfway through the game, but quit because of how hard it was for us. When we went back into it months later and restarted, that's when it clicked. The game just became super enjoyable and we finally got good. There's nothing like playing a Souls-like and finally beating that boss you've been painfully stuck on for hours. Dark Souls 3 is actually amazing, and adding in the DLCs to it just makes it that much better. Yes, there are a few locations that seem unfinished, but 95% of the game is incredible. Every game has flaws, but for us, Dark Souls 3 doesn't really have many. The Ring City DLC is also an amazing end to the Dark Souls series, so let's hope the next IP FromSoft comes up with after Elden Ring is just as amazing. We put Elden Ring as number 1 for one good reason. When it comes to sheer amount of content alone, Elden Ring beats out all the other FromSoft games. Just the base game alone will take 80 to 100 hours to fully complete, and adding in the DLC, another 30 to 40. That's an average time of 130 hours at least to 100% both the base game and the DLC for your first playthrough. The DLC alone could be considered its own game since it takes that long to complete. The game also has the most amount of build variety since there are literally 300 plus weapons you could choose from. It is the culmination of everything FromSoft has ever learned since Demon's Souls, and it's totally worth playing if you haven't already. It is also the best game to start with if you want to start your Souls-like journey, and you might even get addicted to the genre like we have. Elden Ring and its DLC is the ultimate package that will entertain you for a long time, and is probably the best purchase you can make if you are looking for a fun game to play. Our list probably made a ton of people upset with the rankings we have, but we honestly don't care what people think. There are games that we like most, and we gave clear reasons to why they were ranked where they are. People will also be a little biased depending on what games they like the most. If you enjoyed this type of video, then think about giving it a like. Also consider subscribing if you enjoy our content. We do streams every week, have a Discord server, and have a podcast which we haven't published on in a while, but we're going to be publishing soon. We also have some new clothing designs on our website, and all links are in the description, and thanks for watching.